Lieutenant Colonel Amnon Shefler, IDF spokesperson.
Lieutenant Colonel Shefler, there's been some developments at the Al-Shifa hospital, I think, this evening. Can you just update us on what the latest is?
Yes, thank you for having us tonight. We exposed today another critical component of the terror infrastructure in the Al-Shifa hospital. We showed tonight to the world how a shaft in the center of the compound goes down deep into the ground. This goes down, I'm translating into feet, so 21 feet underneath the ground. And then for 150 feet, we have a tunnel that expands underneath the hospital. We have exposed all this now, and we are now getting to a door that is in the end of these 150 feet of concrete tunnel. That this is a door that is a separation that Hamas has used in their tunnels, that if we strike it or if we enter into the tunnel, they can separate between rooms, and they have an opening for gunfire inside this door. Now, we've also known that many times they booby trap these doors, so we're taking it very slowly and very carefully to make sure that, of course, our men that are on the ground working there are safe, and also that it's as safe as possible for the patients and the staff that is still in that hospital.
So this is a very delicate situation that you're in. You have to be very careful in this process of going through these tunnels. How are you able to do that safely? What can you tell us about your process for checking out all of these developments? Because that's a very serious and significant find and discovery that you've made. So how are you able to do this in a safe manner?
So this is day 4 of this very targeted and intel-based operation that we brought a very special unit. They're called the Shaldag unit. They're an Air Force elite unit that is specifically trained for these kind of intel-based operations. And they have a lot of different tools. And on the first day, we found some ammunition and explosives and communication tools and intel infrastructure that was inside the MRI department. Then, based on our information, we checked in other locations, and we found a car that was very similar to the one that was used in October 7th attacks. They're ISIS-looking pickup trucks, and it had a massive amount of ammunition on it. On top of that, it was booby-trapped, which again, sadly comes to show how Hamas, in the center of a hospital, decides that it prefers to kill Israeli soldiers and take with them patients and medical staff that are in the hospital, and that's part of their strategy. So we had then gradually to deal with that booby-trapped car, and then we could expose what was underneath that car, which is the shaft to this tunnel that we exposed. And then later on, another day, we needed to dig into it and make sure again that that was not booby-trapped. And this is how we're doing it, gradually, step by step. While we're doing this, we're also making sure that the hospital is in the best hands that we can at this time. And this is a very difficult thing to mitigate because there's continuous fire around this area with Hamas terrorists. And we're trying at the same time to help those patients that are in there. We have contacted continuously the staff and understood what they need. We brought medical supply to them. We brought water. We brought food. We brought incubators to allow to take babies that are in the hospital in the best care that they can. We have facilitated a corridor that patients and medical staff that can leave from on the eastern side of that hospital, while also creating humanitarian corridors outside of the hospital, leaving to the southern part of the Gaza Strip. So we're continuously in this communication and trying to mitigate between following through with exposing Hamas and meeting our #1 goal to dismantle Hamas, and at the same time, something that we still have not brought up, and I'm happy to elaborate on more, dealing with the hostage crisis. We have 237 hostages that are still being held in Gaza, and that is also something that the Shifa hospital has been a major role in that part as well.
So, yes, I would like to talk about that. And I have a specific question I want to ask you first based on some news that I've heard today. And that is, there's some reporting today that you may have some evidence that some of these foreign hostages were executed. by the Hamas fighters. What can you share about that?
So we've shared tonight evidence, just as you mentioned, of three different hostages that were seen clearly inside the Shifa hospital. One of them is Noah Marziano, a 19-year-old Israeli soldier that was kidnapped on the 7th of October by Hamas, brutally dragged into Gaza. And we know that she was brought into the compound alive, and we know that Hamas murdered her inside the compound. Sadly, we found her body just on an adjacent building outside of the Al-Shifa hospital, and we brought her to Israel. And after conducting forensic testing, we came to the conclusion clearly that she was murdered by Hamas. So that is one sad story that now we have more information on, but now we need to deal, of course, with her death, and we send definitely deep condolences to her family. We also learned from intelligence that two other foreign workers from Israel, foreign nationalities, that were also dragged brutally into the hospital. We released videos showing how they're carried in with Hamas terrorists holding AK-47 and brutally dragging them inside the hospital, were held inside the hospital as well. So we clearly have shown also how Hamas used the grounds of the hospital to also hold hostages.
Lieutenant Colonel, do you know when these hostages were murdered, or a time frame? Was it shortly after they were taken there, or has it been more recently? Because we know there have been discussions about how to get the hostages released, but we've heard from Hamas as well various different offerings or things that they want in return. Do you get the sense that these hostages were murdered early on in this crisis?
So sadly, we know that Noah Marziano was murdered Thursday, 10 days ago. And we have that based on intel. And as I mentioned, also the forensics that we were able to follow through with bringing her body to Israel. Now, we also know that we've been warning for weeks the general population, the innocent civilians of Gaza, to move to the safer area south of the Wadi of Gaza, because we wanted to focus our attention to the northern part of the Gaza Strip. But by saying this, we also allowed our enemy to use this very clear military advantage of surprise to their advantage, because we've been saying we're coming. And where are we coming? Because we wanted to mitigate the civilian casualties and infrastructure that could be hurt while we're conducting our military operations. So clearly they had the time for weeks to clear everything that they could, and to take also the hostages with them to other underground terror infrastructure and to the more southern part of the Gaza Strip.
So you were saying just a bit earlier in this conversation that you had more information to share about efforts to get the hostages out and the condition of the hostages. What more can you share about their situation and I guess the plan or whatever you're doing to try to get them out safely?
So this is day 43 of 237 hostages that are still held by Hamas since the October 7th massacre. And I must start from the very important thing that we need to always remember. The safest and best way for these hostages to come home is for Hamas to release them, and for the international community to continue in pressuring them to doing so. And yet, because we know who we're dealing with, sadly, and their care for life, we have been trying to find any kind of way that we can to bring them home, be it operationally, be it through intel, be it through diplomatic means. And of course, I cannot elaborate now on how we're going to proceed with finding the best way to bring them home, but we're using every effort that we can in order to bring them home, and I appreciate also the help that we're getting from our friends in the US and other places to facilitate that to happen.
So as we look at these proposals, we've been hearing that there's a possibility that dozens of hostages could be released from inside Gaza, and Israel might be willing to grant a truce of some days or something like that. Is that realistic?
I would say from a military perspective, any kind of guidance and order that we get, of course, from the political echelon, we will follow through. And as I mentioned, our two main goals are to dismantle Hamas and to bring the hostages back home safely. And whatever we will need to deal with on the ground, if it is a few days that Hamas now rearms and carries out what they need to do in order to release the soldiers, to release the hostages, then if that's the order we get, then we will clearly follow through with it. Now, will they misuse this time to gather arms and themselves? Of course they will. That is how a terrorist organization like they are operates. But our priority are very clear, and life is what we believe is the most sanctious thing.
Yeah. Lieutenant Colonel Amnon Shefler, thank you. Is there anything you want to add that I haven't asked you about that you think is important?
First of all, I appreciate you taking the time and inviting us here again, and welcome. We welcome that every time and happy to come back again. And I believe that we need to again and again remember, we are fighting a war that Hamas launched. This is a war that they started in a horrific massacre that brought to the death of over 1,200 people of all nationalities in a crazy jihadist way. But our fight is with Hamas. It's not with the people of Gaza. It's not with the Palestinians. We know that Israel and Israelis will be safer once we finish this war, but we also believe that Palestinians will be better off without Hamas over their heads. So thank you for having me, and all the best.
Lieutenant Colonel Amnon Shefler, all the best to you, and thank you again tonight as you continue this difficult work that you're doing. And we're hoping that all of the Israelis will be safe and all of the Palestinians in Gaza can be safe as well. But I guess, as you say, the only way that that can happen is dealing with Hamas. So thank you.
Thank you.